These are stills from the Soviet film, Fate, in which the Nazis are not caricatures, but terrible war crimes. Life and death in the occupation, all that the Russians are so excited to turn into their new ideology. They say that we, the descendants of grandfathers, like them, fight against fascism. But not everyone knows that the story about the shooting of psychiatric patients together with doctors is from Kharkiv.
These are really the scum of society.
You took the Hippocratic Oath. A memorial sign to the victims of those events is located on Saltivka and was in the village of Strylecha. After 80 years, history almost repeated itself. Patients and doctors of several Kharkiv psychiatric clinics again became hostages of the occupiers, ironically, the grandchildren of those grandfathers who fought.
I
saw that the tanks were coming. I immediately called my children. I said, tanks have gone to Kharkiv. What will happen? I don't know, but stay at home. And Elena Mykolaievna, the head of the medical department, called. I say, the tanks went along the track. She said that she could already hear them, and around 6 o'clock in the morning, they shut our transformer, and we were left without electricity.
The village of Strylecha, where the Kharkiv Regional Psychiatric Hospital is located, was captured by the occupiers in the early hours. The Oskal Psychoneurological Dispensary was surrounded on the second day of the war. The invaders went to the city of Izium and the Donbass region. The only bridge through which it was possible to leave for Kharkiv was bombed.
On
February 25th, on the second day of the war, around 3 o'clock, a plane flew over and destroyed our bridge that we passed. Thus, we did not have heating, because there was a gas supply, a pipe, and we could no longer get there or here. All we had left was a bridge across the river that people used to go to work. Because there were a lot of people here.
The occupiers drove past us on their vehicles, but then they entered the territory of our complex. They say, we are coming to you. We have come to release you.
Russians?
Yes, Russians. I say, what did you free us from? From light, from water, from children. Everything was blocked. We are isolated. No, from the Nazis, from the fascists, from everyone. It's okay. You'll be patient for 2 to 3 days. Everything will be fine. We will come to you with flowers. You will meet us. Everything will be fine. They had such plans that they came somewhere for 3 to 4 days. They were not going to stay with us.
At the same time, about 1,000 patients were held hostage by the occupiers, more than 300 in Oskal and more than 600 in Strylecha. Some of them are lying down, some are quite unmanageable. Food and medicine are in short supply. Food was cooked on a bonfire. There is no heat, water is from springs. The organization of evacuation towards Kharkiv is prohibited.
First of all, it is cold, -18. There is no water, electricity, heating. Food, cereals, that's all there was, but you need to cook it somehow on something. And people, they wouldn't be able to stand such cold. But at that time, there was no possibility to take us out. They said we are working on this issue. You can't be taken out now, but I understood that myself. There were already Russians there. That road to the city of Liman was completely shelled.
They did not let us go to Kharkiv. All those who wanted to leave left through Belgorod, a Russian city not far from the border. People drove to Belgorod, and from there, went wherever they could.
But the sick couldn't leave?
Sick? No. Patients were not released. We had one sick boy. His aunt was from Belgorod. She resolved the issue there. The occupiers seemed to have given permission for us to let him go, put him on the bus. But then they did not release him. They returned to us. They did not release the sick.
The patients were doomed. They survived only thanks to the doctors who decided to become hostages with them. They did not run away, they stayed close to the sick.
I understood that there is nothing to wait for. I just packed warm clothes, some valuables, got into the car with my daughter, and returned home on September 26th. Because we came here immediately.
Here?
Yes, we came here. And how else could I do it? How could I treat my patients?
Звісно, паніка почалась. Вони почали нервувати, скупчуватись, кричати, що...
Of course, the panic began. The patients began to get nervous, to gather, to shout that we would all be killed now. We will be abandoned, no one needs us. And when I came here with my family, they saw that I live here with them, they were relieved. We calmed them down, talked to them somehow. It's good that we had medicine. We have a large warehouse. I always stocked up for 3 months so that we had everything. We could give patients sedatives to make them feel, shall we say, a little more comfortable. And psychologically, we said that everything would be fine. At first it was terrible. And then, apparently, they became easier to bear the stress. And they did everything I told them. They probably understood the situation.
Вони просто, коли ти йдеш, вони на тебе дивилися, і от все, що ти їм казав, вони все робили.
Поначалу вони, як кажуть, особливо не трогали. А потім вони потихеньку почали забирати у нас стару територію. Там робили собі вже штаби.
At first they didn't touch us. And then they started to take away our old territory. They made their headquarters there. They had many different units here, and the FSB, Scouts, and many others. But when they came to the department to search, I said, don't touch the sick.
Why did they search the sick?
And they searched everyone, looked for phones. They were looking for a laboratory. They came up with something. Phones were taken from the patients and from us. We hung up all the windows, made sure that no one walked around with a phone, so that they do not cling to us. And the medicine, thank God, we had a supply in our pharmacy. We divided the entire pharmacy into departments.
Doctors and patients in the village of Strelica found themselves under occupation, but the occupiers could not capture the dispensary in Oskol. The river and the resistance of the armed forces of Ukraine prevented it. Then they started shooting the building in which the patients were. Patients were hidden in basements, placed in corridors. Everything was done to save life.
Спочатку ми їх пустили всіх в підвал для того, щоб як-то забезпечити, убезпечити їх від цього жаху. Але це було ще гірше.
First, we lowered them all into the basement to protect them from this horror. But it was even worse, so that's where all their psychological traumas manifested themselves. Because then there was no light in the basement, no conditions at all. We dragged beds and mattresses there to somehow accommodate the patients. But all the same, the mentally ill are afraid, screaming in this darkness. And you still need to feed them, that's another problem. Someone was reminded, someone was not seen, someone hid in some corner. Here we all fit. Here is a very large basement, and there is a room, and there are many more rooms. That's how people lay here. On the floor near the walls, because all the trouble came from here.
Отак покотом. Чому? Тому що я ж кажу, вся біда йшла від тіл.
All this time, at the state level, with the intervention of international organizations, negotiations were held on the provision of a corridor for the removal of patients. The terrorists did not agree for a long time, but continued to shoot houses with people at close range.
Я думала, що все, тому що коли ударили...
I thought that was all. When they hit the building, it was as if it was thrown. And then I heard screams, and I thought, am I alive? And then one of our patients ran in and started shouting, we have a fire, we are burning. We had to do something. I gathered my will into a fist, and together with the patients went to put out the fire.
Did you understand that it was the Russians who were hitting you?
Yes, I understood that it was them. And who else could it be? The Russians were on that side. This is already in September, and 4 hits from that side of the building. They knew that there was an institution here, you couldn't miss us. They also have drones there. I am 100% sure that they knew where they were shooting.
And they shot at sick people?
Yes, it is a fact, they hit us. I don't understand what they were thinking.
Ну це факт, я не знаю, що вони робили, що вони думали.
On March 15th, the evacuation of the Oskilsky Psychoneurological Hospital began. After 3 weeks of horror, Marina's wards found themselves on Ukrainian territory. They were sent to institutions in the west of the country. But Tetyana's patients were under occupation for 7 months together with her. More than 30 patients did not survive to be rescued.
Смертність була, помирали.
There was mortality. Old people were dying of longing. They could not see their children or grandchildren. They began to die of longing. Mortality was still high. Lethality was high.
The mood of the occupiers changed after they were not greeted with flowers and were not sent home 3 days later. They began to dig in and used sick people as slaves.
Приходили, дайте нам стільки.
The occupiers came to us, took our sick people to work, so that they would dig fortifications for them.
Did the Russians force the mentally ill to work?
Yes, they dug trenches for them.
One September night, the occupiers disappeared. They were running from the defenders of the armed forces of Ukraine. But before the doctors had time to take the patients out, the clinic began to be mercilessly shelled from abroad. 4 personnel were killed. Many patients were injured.
А потім почали палити, і рушилися і забори, і повилітали вікна, даже.
And then they started shooting, and fences collapsed, windows were blown out. Even several patients received cuts.
But did they know that they were hitting the hospital?
Тому що вони ж тут були. Вони ж тут були, вони ж, як кажуть, всі виходи і ходи знали.
They knew for sure. Because they were here, they knew where they were shooting. And then the administration decided that we will evacuate our patients, while the road to Kharkiv still exists. At first we calmly drew up documents, prepared patients for the trip. It was already September. Warm things were needed. From 18 to 20 we took them out.
Вересень місяць вже був 20, з 18 по 20 ми їх вивозили. А потім ми почали палити кожного дня, і коли вони в один день...
And then the Russians started shelling us every day. They killed my 2 female nurses, who were evacuating in their car. Their heads were blown off by an explosion. It was terrible. And on the same day, 2 hours later, 2 of my orderlies died in their yard. Then we dropped everything, and quickly took the patients out.
For now, the patients are safe. Could the patients of the 2 institutions survive if their lives were left to the discretion of the invaders? Tetyana Lojanova says that she repeatedly asked the occupiers whether they would suffer the same fate as the Kharkiv doctors and patients in 1942?
Лічно я їм напоминала. Я кажу, бачите, пам'ятаєте, як це було. У нас же...
I personally reminded them, look, you captured our old territory, built your headquarters there, and there was a garden there. And in this garden, there is a grave of shot patients and personnel during World War II. So why should we dig our graves there now?
Так що, кажу, нам свою, кажу, могилку робити.
But the grandfather's grandchildren only looked away.